Alright guys, I'm here for episode 3 of the Not So Scares of Halloween, the review series where I take a look at Halloween-themed movies or television specials or episodes of TV series that are not horror, that are not horror related. And today's episode we're dealing with this: Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost. Released in 1999 from Warner Brothers Home Video, direct to video and DVD. It was, I think, the third one in those, right after Zombie Island and Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island and Scooby-Doo and the Space Invaders. So, is it any good? Well, that's what I'm gonna do. That's what I'm gonna try to find out. So we start in a museum where the gang has a case in progress of some mummy skeleton things, and they're in the process of their trap, which works when Shaggy and Scooby set it off, but sadly the monsters break out. You get a chase scene where you hear the theme song, which is played by Billy Ray Cyrus, before Miley Cyrus became a star. So before she became what she is now. And before he was even on Hannah Montana, when he was just a normal run-of-the-mill singing dude. Eventually these monsters get tripped up and they're unmasked to reveal 2 archaeologists that did this. And we also are introduced to Ben Ravencroft, voiced by Tim Curry, who's really good in this movie, actually. And they say that they never would have got away with it if it wasn't for the meddling writer. Which makes Fred happy, because he didn't say meddling kids, because apparently Fred hates the term meddling kid, because they're not kids. Which is true, they're not, but when the series started they were, back in the whole 1960s. So, then, who Velma knows, she has, I guess, read all his books. Ben invites the gang back to his hometown of Oak Haven, Massachusetts for their autumn festival. And as usual, a mystery's afoot because it's haunted by the ghost of Ben's ancestor, Sarah Ravencroft, who was persecuted for being a witch some 400 years ago, before this. And, you know, Ben decides, he asked if Velma and the other gang want to go see his studio. Velma, Fred, and Daphne go with him, and Shaggy and Scooby go to the local restaurant after Scooby finds a thing that looks like a shoe buckle by digging. Ben's interested in finding Sarah's journal to prove that Sarah was not a witch, but a Wiccan healer. That's going to become a major plot point for later. So, back at the restaurant, Ben had told the mayor to tell the guy who owns the restaurant, who's named Jack, to anything Shaggy and Scooby order is on him. Well, they pretty much eat the guy out of the entire restaurant. And on their way home, they're walking and they meet 3 girls who they're afraid of because they're dressed like vampires. These are the Hex Girls, Dusk, Luna, and Thorn, who are in town for a concert that they're going to be doing at the Autumn Festival. And on their way back from meeting the Hex Girls, Shaggy and Scooby run into the ghost of Sarah Ravencroft, and she fires off fireballs at Shaggy and Scooby, but Velma notices the flash powder behind it. So, after sitting in on a rehearsal from the Hex Girls, they all decide that the Hex Girls need to be investigated. So the gang decides to split up and investigate. And Fred goes with Daphne as usual, which Velma asks why does he always go with Daphne. Which Daphne later brings up too, and Fred doesn't get the chance to answer that. But most people know why. If you follow Scooby-Doo, you probably can figure it out. And then Velma, Shaggy, and Scooby notice that the mayor is locking up a shed. So Velma And Ben will examine the shed, and Shaggy and Scooby chase the mayor, and they follow the mayor throughout town, where the mayor's picking up stuff, dropping stuff off, and all this stuff. And Velma and Ben have discovered a cherry picker that's been recently driven because the engine is still hot. And after following the Hex Girls, they follow Thorn back to her place, and Thorn's doing some kind of weird ritual that makes Daphne and Fred think that Thorn is a vampire, is a witch. So after they all meet up, Velma hatches a plan. And the plan involves the Hex Girls coming to their contest thing, which draws out the witch. And using the trap, they trap the witch, they unmask the witch, and it turns out it's Mr. McKnight who is selling t-shirts at the Autumn Festival. Turns out that the town wants to use, that this whole thing was derided by the town so they can get tourism for their little town for the Autumn Festival. And we then find out that Thorn's name is Sally and that she's 1/16th Wiccan. And Ben is still going on about finding Sarah Ravencroft's journal. So after Velma leads them to the stump, she has Scooby dig up the stump for a couple Scooby snacks, which he does, and Scooby finds a box which has the book in it, and it turns out it's a spell book. Turns out that Sarah Ravencroft was a witch, and that this is what Ben Ravencroft wants, is to rule the world with his ancestor. He says that he arranged everything when he saw an article about Mr. Ink, which I believe is actually the picture in the newspaper is from Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island from the beginning of that. I'm not entirely sure on that, though. So, yeah. And then he lets out Sarah Ravencroft and all this. And he's get these powers now from the book, and he says that the gang can't solve him that easily. At least he didn't start talking in a lot of puns like Jafar did in Aladdin. He does say one, but And Sarah Ravencroft, though, has no interest in working with Ben or rule the world because she wants to destroy the world. And Ben tries to read the spell that'll trap her in the spell book, but because he's not a Wiccan, he can't put her back in the book. Only a person who's a Wiccan can do that. So eventually so after all kinds of stuff comes to life, and there's this hot potato of the Mr. Ink gang with the book, they eventually get the book to Thorn, being 1/16th Wiccan. She reads the spell, and it imprisons Sarah Ravencroft back in the book, and she takes Ben Ravencroft with her for good measure. And the movie ends with a performance by the Hex Girls. So, the Hex Girls, by the way, would return to Scooby-Doo Legend of the Vampire, and I believe an episode of Mystery Incorporated. So, this is one of the better Scooby-Doo movies. I tend to enjoy the Scooby-Doo movies far more than the normal series, because the normal series, I think, doesn't have the traditional Scooby-Doo feel anymore, but the movies still do. At least the older ones. The newer ones, maybe not so much, but it's still there, and I can still enjoy them. So, yeah, this is a good movie. And like I said, it fits the theme of Halloween. So, that's why I did it for this. This will be in the Not So Scared of Halloween playlist. I'll be up tomorrow with a Power Rangers Dino Charge review of episode 15. And an episode of the Not So Scared of Halloween. So, if you like the video, like button is down there, subscribe button is down there, and thank you for watching. Bye.